Hello OTCers, and a huge weekend in Portugal. Yes, we're going to Portugal and the Liga over there because we've just had a match that is season defining. The Clásico, the derby between Sporting and Benfica, the second one of the season, in the penultimate league game of the season. It ended Benfica 1, Sporting 1, and this is absolutely vital because these were the two teams who went into the game level at the top of the Liga, and of course, it being a draw, they emerge level at the top, except Sporting have got the little advantage. It's not goal difference in Portugal, it's head-to-head. And having won just a couple of days before the end of 2024, the first game, Sporting now have the head-to-head on Benfica. What this means is if in the final game of the season, Sporting are able to win their home game against Vitória Guimarães, they will be champions for the second successive year. And this is a huge deal. Because if we look at Os Três Grandes, the big three in Portugal, there's very much a hierarchy to it. There's very much Benfica and Porto, the rich boys, and Sporting a little bit below. Because they haven't had the money over the years, because they haven't been the big shots over the years, that's why they've established their image as the academy club, the club that produced Cristiano Ronaldo and Nani and all the rest of them, Figo, you know them, because they've had to over the years. So having a brilliant academy is very much part of their personality. So for them to be able to do this, it would be the first time in 71 years that they've won successive titles, Sporting. After Ruben Amorim came in and won the title for the first time in 19 years, he won it again for the second time in 4 years last season. And then Amorim sort of sat down and said to all the players at the start of this season, if you stay, I'll stay. Let's go for the second successive title. Let's create history. And they all said, oh yeah, okay, let's stay. And then he left in autumn, having had the once in a lifetime, I guess, opportunity from Manchester United. Now, whether you think that's the right thing or not is a different question. But it has been a difficult and complicated season for Sporting. And for that reason, this will feel so satisfying if they do beat Guimarães and manage to get it over the line next weekend, because they are now onto their third coach of the season, Sporting. They had the successor lined up for Amorim, João Pereira, who was the B team manager, who it quickly became clear was really, really out of his depth. They kind of lost their way in the Champions League as well as losing their way a bit in the Liga, because let's be clear, if Amorim was still the coach, they would have won this league by a mile. They were so much better than everyone else, and you could see Porto and Benfica especially smelling blood when Amorim went, because they thought, okay, this could be a genuine battle for the title now, which has kind of led us to this place of this game at the weekend. Now, this was the biggest challenge for Sporting and for their coach, Rui Borges, who, funnily enough, was the coach of Guimarães before he came over to Sporting to replace João Pereira and become their third coach of the season when it wasn't going very well. And, of course, he's not really coached at this elite level before. So for them to go into the Lions' Den needing this result, a full Estadio de Luz, was a huge challenge, and they met it head on, really. They took the lead in the first couple of minutes. A goal by Francisco Trincão, who has been absolutely key for them, who his return to prominence, really, after spells at Barcelona and Wolves that didn't 100% work out, really sort of shifted Marcus Edwards, who they thought they would be able to sell for 50-60 million at one point, and now he's going to be going to Burnley for, 8? It was Trincão who forced Marcus Edwards out the team. So fitting that he scores the goal, because he's come up with some big goals for them. Of course, I hear you asking, but Victor Gyökeres, he scores all the big goals. He scores all the goals, period. 62 this season for club and country at the time of recording. But Gyökeres, I think when we're looking at how he might fit in the Premier League, when he almost inevitably makes the move there in the summer, perhaps to Arsenal, maybe even to Manchester United, who knows. I think this really underlined this early Sporting goal, just what a good player he is and why he will do so well, because he creates the goal. He's not just a scorer of goals. He's not just a holder up of the ball. There are so many facets to his game. Now, I'm not quite comparing him to Robert Lewandowski, but of course, that's what made Lewandowski so attractive to Bayern when he signed from Borussia Dortmund in the first place when we go back to 2014, because he wasn't just a goal scorer. He performed a number of different functions in that team. And Gyökeres can mix it with tough defenders. He can finish, and he can run the channels as well with his pace and his intelligence. And when you look at the way he creates this goal for Trincao, he makes a run down the left-hand side, which is one of the first attacks of the game, and immediately he attracts 3 defenders to him. So when he finds the right pass, he gets the ball under control and finds the right pass for Trincao, who finishes very, very well. He's taken 3 defenders out. So he's given that bit of space to Trincao to finish it off. Now, look, Sporting do have a replacement lined up for Gyökeres already when he goes the Danish striker, Konrad Harder, who they've sort of managed to do a little handover. He's played a bit this season, backed up Gyökeres, because, of course, the remarkable thing about Gyökeres' goal-scoring record is that he's been injured for a bit of this season. He went through a spell of just being played off the bench as they were trying to manage a thigh injury. So he's not started every single game, which shows you exactly how he is at the top of his game. But I think really when you look at what Sporting have managed to do, they will owe Gyökeres big time if they manage to win this title. Him sticking with them this season has been absolutely vital. And they'll owe Rui Borges, the coaches, as well, because, as we said, he sort of stepped into the unknown, almost a salvage operation, really, because it went so badly under João Pereira. And even though Benfica managed to equalise in the second half of this game, it was a well-earned point from Sporting. And it really is about the Scandinavian influence there as well, because we talked about Harder taking over from Gyökeres next season, but the main guy is the captain, Morten Hjulmand, who has been absolutely fantastic for them this season, who was central to the game plan in this game, and they managed to resist a lot of pressure despite that Karamatokolu equaliser from Benfica in the second half. So they were under pressure, but it wasn't as if it was a complete avalanche from Benfica, and they deserve this point in the end, in my opinion, Sporting, that has allowed them to keep control of the title race. Now, Hjulmand, who, again, I would be very surprised if Premier League clubs were not interested in him in the near future, because he's a really rugged, tough midfielder who uses the ball sensibly, and I think just as importantly, he's an absolute natural leader, becoming the captain at Sporting in only his second year at the club after arriving from Serie A. So the tough thing for them is he got booked, so he won't be playing in the final game against Vitória Guimarães. So if there's a chance for Benfica, you have to say it's the Rui Borges factor as he plays against his former club, and presumably they would like to make it very difficult for him in that final game, and the Hjulmand-shaped hole that Sporting will have to fill. So what about Benfica? Because they had their own tricky start to the season. They made a change in terms of coach as well, bringing back Bruno Lage, and the immediate impact was very good. If you look at the state of flux at Sporting, and the fact that Bruno Lage, as he did the first time, got Benfica playing such attractive football, and they played a lot of that attractive football in the Champions League as well. You think of that 5-4 game with Barcelona, that they're still wondering how they didn't win that on the 7th day of the Champions League group stage, and of course knocking out Monaco in the playoff round. They have had a couple of damaging defeats that have left them behind a little bit, although they've managed to push Sporting all the way. And as we say, it's a very good Sporting side, and that state of flux at the top for Sporting throughout this season has been that sort of leveller. But Bruno Lage, if he doesn't get it over the line, his job will be under threat, because it's Benfica. They have a big budget. They're a selling club, of course, but they've spent on players this season. You look at Vangelis Pavlidis, who his assist, by the way, from Karamatokolu's equaliser is unbelievable. If you get to YouTube it, I'd really recommend it, talking of strikers who aren't just about the goals. And maybe Pavlidis will make the Liga Portugal, his league, after Gyökeres has gone this season, because no one's catching Gyökeres in the goal charts. He's got more than twice as many as anyone else in the league, including Pavlidis and of course including Samu, who plays for Porto, another one who might end up in the Premier League, by the way. But Benfica have got a few questions. So going forward, obviously, the big thing for them is if they don't win the league, they won't qualify for the Champions League automatically. And one of the reasons for that is what's happened in the Europa League, because we've got Manchester United and Tottenham, neither of whom are going to qualify for Europe through the Premier League. One of those is going to take a Champions League place. Now, if the Champions League place was already guaranteed to the Europa League winners, it would have fallen down the automatic Champions League place to the next highest placed team on the UEFA coefficient, which would have been Benfica. So they would have qualified automatically for the Champions League. Instead, they're going to have to go through a couple of qualifying rounds, which again affects their preparation for next season. They kind of need an A list and a B list in terms of transfers, or they have to take a flyer and go out there and spend and really hope that, having assembled a squad for the Champions League, it will be a squad that's actually in the Champions League, because of course the financial difference between playing in the Champions League and the Europa League is significant. The other things for them, as well as the future of Bruno Lage, which I think we'll find out a little bit more about in the coming weeks and days, is Nicolas Otamendi, their centre-back, who is such an important leader for them. We talked about the leadership of Fjellman. That is exactly the same, if not more, from Otamendi. They really want to sign him to a new contract, and they're optimistic of doing so. Angel Di Maria is a bit more of a question mark. Because, of course, 37 years old now. He's had a few little fitness problems this season, although he has managed to start 20 games in the Liga so far, and he wasn't that far away from making a massive difference in this game against Sporting. He had one shot in the first half that beat Rui Silva in the goal, all ends up and just went wide. So he has still got that quality to bend games to his will. But if you go back a couple of months, it looked like Di Maria was staying for another year for sure. And now it appears he's edging a little bit closer to a return to Argentina. So I think Benfica are looking at their squad and thinking, we need this balance between, as they always do, experience and resale. I think the other thing with re-signing Di Maria, when you've got these fitness questions over him, is they're very much hoping, Benfica, that PSG will rescind the contract of Renato Sanchez, and they'll be able to bring him back. Now, again, he's been hampered by all the fitness problems that have hampered really his top-level career in the last 7 or 8 years. So they're hoping PSG will cut their losses and they'll be able to bring back a guy who came out of their academy and work on him, and not have to expect him to be fit every week, not to expect him to play 60 games in the season or whatever. And really, I think that would be a really nice place for Renato Sanchez to hopefully recover at least 70-80% of his best. Now, even look at the end of this, regardless of what happens next week, we expect Sporting to see it over the line. The story of Benfica and Sporting for this season, the story of the Derby de Segundo Circular, which is the road that goes around Lisbon and joins the two stadiums, it's not over, because on Sunday, 25th of May, these two meet again in the Taça de Portugal, the Portuguese Cup final. So there is a potential of a double for either of these teams. They meet at the Estadio Nacional in Jamor. That's where Celtic won the European Cup in 1967. It's a very particular, picturesque setting. You have this wood around it. Lots of people with their families go and have a picnic earlier in the day and then go into the game afterwards, which kicks off around 5 o'clock, I think it is, from memory. That's normally the case. And this will be full-blooded as well, because these two teams have been very keenly matched throughout this season. Of course, there was a 1-1 draw at the weekend. As we said, Sporting have a head-to-head drop because they won 1-0 in the first game. It's close. It's always close. And there's pride as well as silverware on the line as these two teams battle for supremacy. And Sporting very, very close to sealing their aim from the start of the season when Ruben Amorim was still in situ. Thanks so much for joining us on OTC YouTube. We're here every Monday with a reaction from what's happened in a big story at the weekend. And of course, you can get us on your favourite podcast catcher for the pod. Every Thursday, me, Dot Adebayo and guests are getting really under the skin of some of the biggest issues in European football. And every Friday, Ask OTC. That's the second pod we have every week. Me, Dotton and guest, again, answering your questions. That's right, your questions. So leave them below the line. Get us on socials. We'll speak to you on Thursday and we'll see you again next Monday.